Well, you tried the other day to raise science-based questions about pivotal events in American history 24 years ago, 9/11, and you asked a question that I think any honest person would ask, like, Building 7 was never hit by a plane. Why did it fall down in exactly the same way the first two towers did? That shouldn't be verboten. So you asked that question. I want to read the response from a Republican in the House, a new member called Mike Lawler, I guess from New York. And he said this. I don't know if you know him. You probably don't. He just got there. Quote, Senator Johnson should stop peddling conspiracy theories about the worst terrorist attack in our nation's history and one that forever altered the lives of so many of my fellow New Yorkers. Crap like this dishonors and disrespects the innocent lives lost, our brave first responders, and all families and survivors who still carry the pain of 9/11 each and every day. So I think Lawler was like in high school when 9/11 happened. He doesn't really seem to represent New York anyway, but whatever. The point is, why would he attack you personally for asking like the most obvious question ever, one rooted in science, which is how did this happen? Like, what is that?
Oh, it sure hurt my feelings.
I know you don't care, but I just thought, why Mike Lawler, who literally just got there, got a lot of problems in New York, why is he mad at you for asking that? You think he would want you to ask?
What is so off base about that is the only reason I'm looking at this is because the then chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation, now I'm chair, but Senator Blumenthal, he wanted to do this investigation on Saudi's negotiation with PGA. And he's doing it because he's from Connecticut and got 9/11 families. They want to know what Saudi involvement was.
Yes, fair.
I didn't agree with it. I thought that this is a private sector negotiation. Let them take care of that, okay? But he did anyway. So leading up to a pretty well-publicized hearing, I started getting 9/11 family members see me in the hallway. They would literally in the hallway in Congress, and they would have a heavily redacted document they got from the FBI in terms of what the Saudi involvement was in 9/11, what we knew. And they asked me, can you please get this unredacted? We want to know what the government knows about these things. Now, this is 20-some years after 9/11. It's probably about time. So in the hearing, I asked Senator Blumenthal, would you join me in requesting from the Biden administration this information from the 9/11 family? So,
No.
Well, he had to. But the bottom line is, I got down this road because the 9/11 families want to know the answer. And once I opened up that inquiry, now I start getting all kinds of information.
But why is anything still redacted from 9/11? It was 24 years ago. It changed this country completely. Every American has, Lawler's right in the sense that it really affected every American. Why would our government continue to lie about it?
I can't answer the question. All I can say is it raises my suspicion.
Yeah.
And then when you start getting again, I'm just as prone to everybody else going, that's wacko.
Yeah, me too.
But then you start getting the information and you start going, wow, is that weird? Building number 7, you see it come down, and we've all watched because it's cool to watch. These buildings being demolished, boom, just free fall. Well, the only way that happens is if you remove all of their supports at the same time. You blow them all out so that a building can really free fall. If it's collapsing something else, it's like you build like a fire and it collapses off to the side or something, right? So that was pretty strange. But the more documentaries I look at this stuff, the more information I receive. You talk to guys like Richard Gage, the head of the Architects for 9/11 Truth. They feed you information, and you start asking a lot of questions, and you just realize there's a lot here that simply has not been answered. So, and the firefighters want to know. There was never a steel structure building that ever collapsed because of a fire.
Especially Building 7. Well, you don't get a lot of buildings that, commercial airliners run into, so you can be like, oh, who knows?
You're right.
But Building 7 was not hit by anything. It's actually quite a distance from the other towers. It's not right next door. It's hundreds of yards away, I think. And debris hit it, and it caught fire, and then the whole thing collapsed, as we saw on camera. That was not even included in the 9/11 report. There's no mention of Building 7. It's like, anyway, the point is...
You also have people, because they never explored explosions, but a guy named Graham McQueen researched this. He dug up, footage filmed at Ground Zero, 156 witnesses, first responders saying they heard explosions before the buildings came down. So what is, trust me, there are a lot of unanswered questions. Things you just can't explain that. So I'm not sure where it goes. I know you had Kurt Weldon on.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of information on kind of the before and after.
Yes.
Because he's connected to the firefighting community. The firefighters want to know. So there are some very legitimate questions, a lot of them, that remain unanswered. All swept under the rug. They were, and you look at this, news reporters were talking about explosions. By the next day, nobody was. There's a lot of power.
So I'm interested in your evolution on this. So you said before Blumenthal, your colleague Senator Blumenthal, from Connecticut, raised this in a different way. You were not wondering what happened to Building 7.
No, never. Don't think I've ever heard of it.
Really?
Yeah, I figured the Twin Towers came down. Again, I'm not a New Yorker. It affected all of us. We all saw them come down. We said, the world has changed.
Yes.
This changed the world. And it did.
Oh, more than any other event in my life.
Not for the better.
No, not at all.
Okay, this is a seminal event in our lifetime. And the fact that there's so many unanswered questions, that the Bush administration was so resistant to even a 9/11 commission, that the commissioners claimed that it was set up to fail, that you've got a Bob Kerrey who's since passed said this is a 30-year conspiracy. It's I could go
Senator
on
Kerry
and on.
said that?
Yeah.
Of Nebraska?
Yeah, the comment.
Received the Medal of Honor in Vietnam, by the way.
He's kind of walking away and go, this is a 30-year conspiracy. Well, what do you mean by that? Nobody ever found out. So again, I'm just throwing out little snippets. But as I said, it's amazing the questions that you see, the legitimate questions that have been raised that remain unanswered. That's all I can say. All I have is questions right now. I don't have any
I get
answers.
it, but I just I feel exactly the same way. I have no clue. I have no theory of everything in this at all. But my question is, you just came at this cold, though.
Yeah, no, this was not something that I was hankering to delve into.
What are the questions?
It's kind of like Bobby Kennedy, how he got involved in childhood vaccines.
Yes.
He was giving all these speeches on the environment, and all these moms would show up with their T-shirts, and he kept him at bay for quite some time till one of the moms found out where he lived, came to his house with a stack of science, which he knew how to read because he was an environmental lawyer, and said, I'm not going to leave till you read this. And to his credit, he sat down and read it. And further to his credit is once he read it, he couldn't, once his eyes were open, he couldn't close them. As much as he probably wanted to, as much as he realized the morass he was stepping into, I can't close my eyes. I can't. And particularly with childhood vaccine injuries, it's bad enough with the COVID vax.
Yes.
The Ernest Ramirez, lost his son. It's just heartbreaking. The Facebook dissolving these groups that were the only lifeline for some of these vaccine injured, and they started committing suicide afterwards because they lost that connection that they didn't have before these groups. But you look at the documentary Just Vaxxed, and you see these parents and they have the video of a perfectly normal child, and they take them in for a well visit. So they get a vaccine. That night they spike a fever, have a seizure. Now they got a 26-year-old son who is extremely autistic, can't verbalize, acts up as it's horrible. And you see the stats where you go from, it's hard to verify the 10,001, but we know by CDC's own hundreds to one to now 30 something to one. By the way, while they've actually narrowed the definition of autism, they didn't expand it, they narrowed it. What's causing that? And after the makers of Vaxxed went on a road trip with a bus premiering this thing, and other parents would come up to the bus, and so they started videotaping their stories. And they got something like 10,000 stories of parents almost identical. It's like perfectly normal child, got the video to prove it, go in, within that night or within days. You start looking at the increase in SIDS versus the increase of the vaccine schedule. Again, I'm not a doctor, not a medical researcher. My eyes have just been opened up to how so much information, so many questions, is probably the best way to put it, have just been suppressed. You can't even ask them. Anybody who does gets marginalized, vilified, discredited, and that's how they battle this. They don't battle it with the truth. They don't. In my public events, I always invited the federal officials. I always invited the executives from the big pharma. Come in and defend yourself. This is an open forum. I'll give you plenty of time. I'll be very fair. Speak your piece. I want to hear from you. They won't do it. They will. Peter Hotez famously, Mr. Vaccine Pusher, gets offered what was the final offer? $2 million. Sit down and argue with not a doctor, a lawyer.
Yeah.
Just we'll debate RFK Jr. And he wouldn't even do it. What does that tell you?
He's just calling people names. So just back to 9/11 for a minute. You never really thought about it like most people. Me too. I yelled at anyone who asked questions about it myself. So I'm sympathetic, actually, in some ways, to people who don't want to hear it. But now that you've looked into it and you said you don't have a coherent theory as to what it was, but you've got a lot of questions, which questions trouble you the most?
Well, it starts with Building 7.
Yes. Where
you look at that and it just, this is really weird. It does come down just like a, building demolition type of project. You get a documentary of this Alaskan structural engineering professor that does a 4-year study on it, pretty well debunks NIST's analysis. And again, you don't have to be a structural engineer to say this really doesn't make sense. When you start putting together at what temperature steel melts, they had molten steel in the Twin Towers, and I'm not sure they had it in number 7, but if one column said one column expanded, went off kilter, and that's what brought the whole thing down, well, it wouldn't come down so symmetrically. You wouldn't have a free fall. Then you get deeper into it, and there was I think his name was Barry Jennings. He was there, went up there. They'd already cleared out Building 7, even though he went up there to their command center, and somebody goes, "Get out of there." It was literally predicted to come down, even though, again, a steel structured building had never collapsed due to fire because they're protected that way. He heard explosions. He got down to the sixth floor, and had to go back up to 8 because something had been blown out. And again, what caused
the building was not hit by an airplane?
No, I mean they did. It was damaged, but even NIST says not significant damage by the Twin Towers falling. So again, there's just so many things. I mean, you could spend quite some time. I mean, the ash contains residual of both burnt and unburnt thermite, which is used to demolish buildings, and it's military grade. And there's nanoparticle thermite, and you have all these metal spheres that you only get these iron spheres with extreme temperatures. And again, jet fuel burns at below, I think, 1,000 degrees of Fahrenheit, and again, nothing's adding up. I mean, just structurally, just basic engineering, basic physics, it doesn't make sense.